The wind blew low and heavy across Timber Ridge, where the trees leaned like old men with tired spines. High above the town of Black Hollow, nestled at the edge of the mountain's breadth, stood a weather-worn cabin, its logs dark with age, its windows clouded with time. Inside, a man moved slowly. Each step he took across the creaking floorboards sounded like memory. His name was Samuel Knox. Once he had hands that carved laughter from cedar and oak, hands that built cradles and cribs, not just cabins. But after the fever came, stealing both his wife Eleanor and their 5-year-old son Jacob, those same hands hadn't touched another soul. He didn't cut timber anymore. He didn't write letters. He didn't light 2 candles at supper like she used to do. The silence had become his prayer, and the isolation his penance. The locals in town spoke of him with a hush, like he was already a ghost. That's old Sam Knox. Lives up where no echo comes back. Heard he buried them both under the aspen tree. And he had. Each morning before the fog lifted, he walked to that solitary tree. Not to speak. He hadn't found the strength to speak to them in years, but to sit. Sometimes he'd rest a hand on the cold stone that bore both names. Eleanor Whitmore Knox, 1843-1877. Jacob Ellis Knox, 1872-1877. The fever had swept through Black Hollow like dry fire through brush. They were just 2 among many, but to Sam, they were the only 2 who had ever mattered. Now 5 winters had passed. He didn't count them. He just measured time by the weight of the snow on the roof and how many times he sharpened his axe but never used it. Then came the day the sky cracked, not with lightning, but with sound. A sound he hadn't heard in half a decade, a knock at the door. At first, he didn't move. He assumed it was the wind, or worse, a memory. His grief had a cruel way of replaying sounds it wasn't supposed to remember. Eleanor's laughter, Jacob's footsteps. But then it came again. 3 soft raps, hesitant, unsure, like someone asking permission to exist. Sam stood slowly, every muscle remembering its weight. His heart, usually quiet like the woods, now beat like hooves on packed earth. He crossed the room in silence and opened the door. There she stood, soaked from the rain, barely more than a girl, maybe 20 at most. Her hair clung to her face in wet ropes, and in her arms, wrapped in an old wool blanket, was someone, small, breathing, asleep. She looked at him, not with fear, but something else, something deeper, like she had spent her whole life walking toward this door, without knowing why. "Are you Mr. Knox?" she asked. Her voice was brittle, wind-chapped, and Sam, the man who hadn't spoken to anyone in 5 years, found his voice returning like an echo from the mountainside. "I am." She stepped forward, holding the bundle closer. "I need to tell you something, but first, he's hungry." "May we come in?" He hesitated, but something, maybe Eleanor's memory, maybe the whisper of mercy that hadn't died with her, made him open the door wider. As she stepped in, Sam closed the door behind her, and for the first time in half a decade, the silence broke. Not with words, but with the sound of new life breathing beside a fire that hadn't been lit in years. What would you have done if someone knocked on your door after years of silence? Tell me in the comments. And stay for chapter 2, where secrets begin to unfold. The fire crackled in the hearth, its reluctant flames licking the air, as if uncertain whether they were welcome after such long silence. Samuel sat across from the girl, watching her as she cradled the child, a boy no more than 6 months old. His small fists twitched in sleep, and his chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of trust. Samuel had forgotten what it was like to have another heartbeat in the cabin. He offered her a tin cup of water. She accepted with trembling fingers. "My name is June," she said at last, her voice carrying the hush of someone who'd spent too long whispering to themselves. "June Walker. I came from across the canyon, over the pass." "That's a long way," Sam murmured. His voice still sounded strange to him, like boots worn only for funerals. "I had to come. I didn't know who else to find." She looked down at the baby. "He's not mine." Sam stiffened. The words opened more questions than answers. She seemed to feel the weight of his stare. I didn't take him, if that's what you're thinking. I found him, out there near Dry Rock Creek, alone, crying. His mother, she was already gone. I buried her. She said it like someone used to burying people. Sam didn't speak. He let the fire fill the space between them. I recognized the necklace around her neck, she continued. It was from the Knox family, your wife's. Sam's throat closed like the walls were suddenly shrinking. He leaned forward, voice low and sharp. That necklace was buried with my wife. I know, June said quietly, but the woman I buried had it on. Us outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes and groaning through the timber. Sam stood abruptly, pacing, his hands in fists. He stopped at the mantel and stared at the faded photograph of Eleanor and Jacob, their smiles frozen in summer sunlight. I dug her grave myself, he muttered. I laid her in it. I believe you, June said. Sam turned. Then what the hell are you saying? She took a breath, steadying herself. I'm saying that whoever that woman was, she had a child. She had your wife's necklace, and she was trying to reach you. The baby stirred. June rocked him instinctively. Sam's voice lowered. You think she stole it? I don't know. But the boy, look at him. Sam didn't want to. But something inside, something wounded and curious, forced him to step closer. The boy had a face too small to carry such weight. But when Sam looked, really looked, he felt the breath leave his chest. The eyes, grey, clear, Eleanor's. Whose child is this? Sam whispered. I was hoping you could tell me, June said. Later that night, when the boy was asleep in the cot Sam had built with Jacob years ago, and June sat by the fire drying her wet socks, Sam poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a cracked glass. He stared at it for a long time before speaking again. You said you recognized the necklace. I saw it once, on a woman in town. She said it was her grandmother's. Sam frowned. We never had daughters, but your wife had a sister, didn't she, Ruth? He nodded slowly. Yes, but she died young. No children. Are you sure? Sam looked at her. And that was when the storm began. Not outside, but inside his memory. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. The fire hissed low. The baby sighed in his sleep. Sam walked to the window and looked out across the ridge. The aspen tree where he'd buried his wife and son swayed in the wind, a sentinel in the darkness. But now, the silence no longer felt like a friend. It felt like a lie. What would you do if the past you buried came knocking with a child in its arms? Let me know in the comments. And stay for Chapter 3, where the truth starts to rise like smoke from the ashes. The next morning broke cold and grey, the kind of sky that felt like it would never open to sun. Fog hung thick over Timber Ridge, curling low through the trees like it was searching for something or someone. Samuel Knox rose before dawn. He hadn't slept. The memory of Eleanor's necklace clinging to a dead stranger's throat was like a splinter in his mind. He hadn't touched that locket since the day he'd kissed her forehead and closed the coffin lid. And now, it was back, on a woman he never knew, a woman who may have had his blood in her arms. He didn't speak to June as he dressed and pulled on his boots. She sat silently by the hearth, warming her hands, eyes swollen from sleep. The baby stirred in the cot, but didn't cry. Sam opened the cabin door. I'm going to the graves. I'll come with you, she said softly. He didn't answer, but he didn't stop her. They walked side by side through the thinning woods, their breath ghosting in the cold air. No words passed between them, just the sound of boots on frostbitten soil and the creak of trees overhead. The aspen tree stood tall at the edge of the bluff, its white bark peeling in thin strips like old skin. Beneath it, 2 small markers leaned slightly, as if bowing to time, Eleanor and Jacob. Sam knelt slowly. His knees ached from years of labor and silence. He pressed his hand to the earth like he used to, but today, something felt wrong, too soft. He brushed the leaves away and paused, then dug, gently with his hands. The topsoil crumbled easily. June stepped forward. "What is it?" Sam didn't answer. He dug faster, his breathing loud now, sweat mixed with cold air on his skin. Then, the shock of wood, but not the smooth grain of the coffin he'd built. It was splintered, rotted. He dug deeper, frantically. His fingers struck air, empty space. The coffin was empty. He staggered back, mud on his hands, face pale. "They're gone." June knelt beside him. "Both of them." He nodded, numb. "I buried them right here. I nailed it shut. I covered it myself." She looked at the empty grave, her voice barely a whisper. "Then someone came after." Sam stood slowly, his voice hoarse. "Why?" June turned to him, her eyes full of something deeper than fear. "Maybe they didn't want them buried." Sam's fists clenched. Who would take a child from the grave? A woman? Why take the necklace? Why bring it back now? Then he paused, because somewhere, deep in the fog, a sound broke through. A cough, wet and ragged, human. Sam turned sharply. There, just beyond the ridge, a flicker of movement. Someone watching them. He ran. Branches clawed at his coat as he tore through the underbrush. The fog thickened, swallowing trees and time. He reached a clearing and stopped, chest heaving. Nothing. Only quiet. Only mist. He stood there a long moment, heart racing, blood in his ears. Then, a small object in the dirt. He bent down. It was a button, metal, old, and engraved with the letters WR. He stared at it, turned it over, and then suddenly a memory. From the war, a man in his company, a scout, a thief, Wesley Ridge. That night, back at the cabin, June watched Sam pace like a man who had awakened from a nightmare, only to find himself in another. "I think someone took them," he said finally. "Not just their things, their bodies." June stared at him. "But why?" He turned. "Wesley Ridge was a deserter. I caught him stealing a soldier's boots during a snowstorm. I let him go, never saw him again. But this," he held up the button, "this is his mark." June's eyes darkened. "And if he's still alive? Then he knows something, and I'm going to find him." Outside, the wind howled across the ridge, as if calling out names that no one remembered. Inside, the child slept peacefully, and in Sam's chest, for the first time in years, not sorrow, but purpose began to burn. If someone dug up your past, would you have the strength to face it? Tell me in the comments. And stay for chapter 4, where the trail leads deeper, and the truth gets colder. The next morning, the mountain seemed to hold its breath. Samuel packed supplies into an old canvas satchel. Jerky, biscuits, a water flask, his father's knife, and a revolver he hadn't loaded since the day Eleanor died. His hands moved with muscle memory, but his mind was already racing through trails, maps, and ghost towns where a man like Wesley Ridge might hide. June sat quietly, feeding the baby warm milk from a tin cup. She hadn't asked to come, but she hadn't said she'd stay either. "I won't stop you," she finally said, eyes on the flames. "But if he's what you say, you'll need someone who knows how to track." Sam raised an eyebrow. "You? I crossed 3 counties on foot carrying a baby. I think I qualify." He didn't smile, but something behind his eyes shifted. They left by mid-morning. Down through Black Hollow, the trail cut like a scar through the forest. Fog clung to the low branches, and every crow's cry sounded like a warning. June rode behind Sam on a borrowed mule from an old rancher who still remembered his name and owed him too many favors to ask why. They spoke little, except for what was needed to read the land. June surprised Sam. She moved, like someone raised in silence. She noticed broken twigs, ash piles, cigarette stubs. She had the instincts of someone who'd been hunted before, and maybe she had. By the second day, they reached the ghost town of Ashford Hollow, once a mining boom town, now nothing but collapsed roofs and sun-bleached signs swinging in the wind. June pointed toward the saloon ruins. "That's where he sleeps." Sam narrowed his eyes. "You've been here?" She nodded. "When I first ran, a man there gave me shelter until he didn't. He knew Ridge. They used to run scams together, grave robbing, fake burials, selling trinkets from the dead. Sam's fists clenched. That necklace, she nodded, probably stolen and sold, but someone gave it back. On purpose. They moved slowly, boots crunching glass and rot. Then a voice, low, raspy, from inside the saloon. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again." Wesley Ridge looked older than Sam remembered. Skin like bark, beard wiry and grey, eyes sharp but tired. He leaned against a broken bar, nursing a bottle of something that smelled like poison. "I figured you'd be dead by now, Knox," he said. Sam didn't reply. He stepped forward. "You dug them up," Sam said, not a question. Wesley chuckled. "You came all this way for ghosts?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Why?" The older man shrugged. "Orders." June stepped forward. "From who?" Wesley blinked, noticing her for the first time. Then slowly he grinned. A twisted, yellow-toothed thing. "Well, I'll be damned. You still breathing?" Sam moved faster than June expected, grabbed Wesley by the collar and slammed him into the wall, boards shuddering. "Tell me who sent you!" Wesley didn't fight. He just smiled wider. "She ain't dead, Knox." Sam froze. "What?" Wesley spit blood and grinned. "The woman? Your Eleanor? She ain't where you left her, and neither's the boy." Sam stepped back, fists trembling. "You're lying." But Wesley's eyes, glassy, bitter, held no deceit. "She didn't die that night. Someone paid to fake the burial. You buried a box of rocks." June gasped softly. "And the child?" Sam asked. Wesley shrugged. "Some say she ran, some say she was taken. But you're chasing a ghost, my friend, and someone else is chasing you." A sound behind them, metal sliding. June turned first, too late. From the doorway a shot rang out. Wesley Ridge collapsed in Sam's arms, blood blooming from his chest. The shooter was gone. They buried Wesley outside Ashford Hollow, under a rusted sign that once read Whiskey 5C. June wept, not for Wesley, but for everything he had taken from others, for the life he'd stolen and the lives he may have saved by dying. Sam stared at the dirt. "She's alive," he whispered, "and someone doesn't want you to know. What if the person you buried was never in the grave at all? Tell me what you'd do. And don't miss chapter 5 where the chase begins, and the hunter becomes the hunted." They rode hard through the canyon pass, the wind biting at their coats like angry dogs. Behind them, Ashford Hollow disappeared into the mist, and with it any illusion that this journey was safe. Wesley Ridge's last words echoed in Samuel's chest like a drumbeat. "She ain't where you left her." It wasn't just grief anymore. It was war. That night, they made camp near an old prospector's trail, a hidden hollow protected by thick pine and a stream that whispered just loud enough to cover fear. June built the fire. Sam stood on watch, revolver in hand, back pressed to a tree. Neither of them slept. In the early hours, when only the stars remained awake, June broke the silence. "I lied to you." Sam turned, but said nothing. "The baby. I didn't just find him," she confessed. "I was told to bring him to you." Sam didn't speak. He waited. June's voice shook. There was a woman, maybe 40, with a scar under her jaw and hands like someone who'd worked the land. She gave me the necklace and told me, "Take him to Samuel Knox, he'll understand, that's all." "Did she say her name?" June shook her head. "But she knew yours. She knew where you lived. She said if I didn't do it, the boy wouldn't survive the winter." Sam exhaled slowly. "And you believed her?" June looked into the fire. "I had nothing left to lose." At dawn, Sam inspected the locket once more. It had a hidden clasp he hadn't noticed before. A soft click revealed a folded piece of paper inside. A map, crude, hand-drawn, but familiar. It traced the ridgeline north of Timber Ridge, past an abandoned chapel and deep into a place the locals called Dagger's Hollow, a region untouched by miners or ranchers, said to belong only to the wind and the wolves. Sam's eyes narrowed. This was Eleanor's handwriting. June stood beside him. "Then we follow it." The journey took 2 days. Through icy ravines, steep switchbacks, and caves where bats hung like forgotten coats. At one point they crossed paths with a rider, a bounty hunter from out east who asked too many questions and rode off too quickly when Sam said his name. "I don't like it," Sam said that night. "Someone's setting us up, the trail's too clean." "Or she wants you to find her," June replied. Sam looked at her. "Or someone wants me dead before I do." On the third morning, they reached a plateau overlooking the valley drawn on the map. Below them, nestled between cliffs and river, stood a small settlement, no more than 4 structures. One of them, a cabin with white smoke rising from the chimney. A figure moved near the woodpile. From this distance it was hard to see, but the movement was familiar. Too familiar. Sam's legs went weak. "I think that's her." June gripped his arm. "Wait." From the opposite ridge, 2 men on horseback watched the cabin through scopes. Bounty hunters, armed. "They're not here for her," June said. "They're here for you." Sam turned, fury in his eyes. "Then let them try." He began down the slope. The ambush came fast. Gunfire split the quiet. A bullet grazed Sam's shoulder, knocking him to the ground. June returned fire from behind a fallen log, hitting one of the horses. The other rider charged forward, but Sam, bleeding and furious, rolled behind a stump and fired once, twice. The man fell. June sprinted to Sam's side. "You're hit." He winced. "It's nothing. It's through." He looked up at her. "Then get me to her before I fall." They descended the last stretch as thunder rolled behind the mountains. At the door, Sam raised his hand. It trembled. He knocked, once. The door opened, and there she stood, older, thinner, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but her, Eleanor. She dropped the kettle in her hand. It clattered to the floor, water hissing on the hot stones. She stepped forward slowly, as if afraid the vision might vanish. "Sam?" He couldn't speak. She cupped his face. Her hands were shaking. "I thought they killed you." He collapsed into her arms. "What would you do if the person you loved most let you believe they were dead? Let me know, and stay for chapter 6, where love meets betrayal and the full truth is finally uncovered." The room was warm, but Samuel shivered. Eleanor held him like she had in another life, back when the scent of pine and bread had filled their cabin on Sundays and laughter had danced between the walls. But now everything felt foreign. Her arms were thinner. Her hair was streaked with grey. Her embrace was steady, but her eyes held secrets. Behind them, June waited outside, the baby wrapped tight against the mountain wind. She didn't follow them in. She knew some moments belonged to the dead before they belonged to the living again. Sam sat in the wooden chair by the fire, blood soaking through the sleeve June had bandaged earlier. Eleanor knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to the wound. "You shouldn't have come," she said softly. He blinked, stunned. What else was I supposed to do? She looked up at him, and there it was. The sadness in her eyes, not of grief, but of guilt. "You should have stayed away," she whispered. "It was safer. For everyone." Sam stood. "No," he said. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to vanish, let me bury you, and then tell me I should have stayed away." She flinched but didn't argue. He took a breath. "Start talking. Now." Eleanor stood, walked to the far end of the cabin, and opened a wooden box under the floorboards. From it, she removed a stack of letters. Faded, unsent, many sealed and unopened. "I tried," she said. "I tried to reach you. They watched everything, controlled the post, controlled who could come into Black Hollow." "Who?" Sam asked. "Land barons," she said bitterly. "When the fever came, they used it to take over land. Families who died, their land was claimed by the state, but in truth by men like Caleb Harrow. Sam knew the name. Harrow had men, guns, papers, and he had the law in his pocket." "They thought I was dead," Eleanor said. "But I lived, barely. A midwife from the mining camp pulled me from the house after you left to get the doctor. She saved Jacob too." Sam's knees nearly buckled. "Jacob's alive." Her silence answered everything. His voice cracked. "Where is he?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Gone." She sank into the chair across from him. "When I woke up days later, we were already registered as dead. I couldn't return, not without endangering you. Harrow's men came after me anyway. They found us. Jacob was taken when he was 5. Sam gripped the edge of the table. I tried to track him. For years. I left messages in letters. June's the first one who got close enough to bring him back to you. The boy is Jacob's son, Sam asked. She nodded. Then where's Jacob now? Eleanor's voice broke. In Harrow's camp, the one hidden past the mines. They use laborers, build weapons, trade with outlaws. Jacob's been forced to work for them ever since he was 12. Sam's heart twisted. You knew where he was, and you didn't come to me. Eleanor looked away. I thought I could get him out on my own. I couldn't bear the thought of him, being caught again. Sam stood slowly. I'm not losing another son. That night, the 3 of them, Sam, Eleanor, and June, studied the terrain, marking the hidden paths that led through the mountains to Harrow's operation. Sam cleaned his revolver. Eleanor stitched his sleeve. June rocked the baby near the fire. There was a stillness in the room, but not peace. It was the stillness before a storm, the kind that changes everything. Outside, the moon rose full over the ridge, and deep in the valley beyond, fires burned at the edge of a camp where men labored under lantern light, and one of them, eyes weary and wrists scarred, looked up at the same moon. Jacob Knox was alive, and he was waiting. If you knew your child was alive but enslaved by powerful men, would you risk your life to get them back? Leave your thoughts below. And don't miss Chapter 7, the final chapter, where the past, the bloodline, and justice collide in one final stand. The climb toward Harrow's camp began before dawn. Samuel led the way, rifle slung over his back, jaw clenched like stone. Beside him, June carried the baby on her chest, eyes sharp, steps steady. Eleanor trailed just behind, the weight of the past pressing with each footfall. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Everyone knew what was at stake. Harrow's camp sat like a scar in the land, rows of tents and barracks surrounded by barbed wire, and guards who wore their cruelty on their sleeves. Beyond the compound, a cavern carved into the mountain itself, where men worked under the crack of whips and the sting of cold iron. And among them, Jacob, older now, maybe 18, his shoulders broad, his face hardened. But the boy Sam once held in his arms was still there, in the way he moved, careful, silent, always watching. Sam spotted him from the ridge and nearly lost control. June grabbed his arm. Wait for the signal. He nodded, jaw trembling. Their plan was simple but fragile. June would draw the guards by setting fire to the far end of the stockpile tents, dry goods and gunpowder. Eleanor would slip inside with Sam through the southern fence, using the shift change to move undetected. Once Jacob was out, they would circle north and ride fast through the canyon, where no wagons could follow. But plans, like families, break easily, and Harrow had been warned. The explosion hit harder than expected. Flames lit the camp in orange fury, and guards screamed as crates of ammunition popped like angry thunder. Amid the chaos, Sam and Eleanor ran, sliding beneath the fence, slipping through the smoke. Inside the mines, Sam found Jacob. Their eyes met. The same eyes Eleanor had. The same fire. "Dad," Jacob whispered. Sam choked. "I'm here, son." But before they could embrace, gunshots rang out. Harrow emerged from the smoke, a long rifle in hand, coat flapping like a vulture's wings. He aimed at Sam, calm as ever. "You never did know when to stay buried, Knox." Sam pushed Jacob behind him. "You took everything from me." Harrow smirked. "No, Sam. I made you who you are." June appeared from the side, raising her pistol. But Harrow was faster. The bullet struck her shoulder. She dropped hard. Eleanor screamed and ran to her side. Sam, heart-burning, turned back and fired. One shot, straight through Harrow's chest. The man fell like a tree, eyes wide, rifle slipping from his hands. It was over. They didn't wait for the smoke to settle. Sam carried June. Eleanor held the baby. Jacob ran ahead, clearing the path. They stole horses and rode through the northern trail, the wind chasing them but never catching them. They reached the old cabin by nightfall. The same one where it had all started. And this time, they weren't running anymore. 2 weeks later, June stood on the porch, her arm in a sling, watching the sun rise over Timber Ridge. She smiled as Jacob carved a cradle with Sam's old tools, while Eleanor baked bread with a hum on her lips. The baby gurgled softly near the fire. Sam stood beside her. "You staying?" he asked. June nodded. "I think I finally found where I belong." He smiled. "You saved us." She looked at him. "You saved yourself." He shook his head slowly. "No, you knocked on the door." That evening, as the sun bled gold into the sky, they gathered around the table. A family no longer broken. A circle once shattered, now whole again, not because they avoided pain, but because they walked through it together. And for the first time in many, many years, Samuel Knox gave thanks out loud, not to silence, but to hope. Would you have forgiven someone who vanished to protect you? Would you rebuild, even after losing everything? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances.